In your packet on Similarity and Trig test review homework, let's look at page 3. First, classifying triangles. So the first question is asking, do the sides form a triangle? To test that, we have to add the smallest two sides, in this case 7 plus 12, and check, is that greater than the longest side, 14? 19 is greater than 14, so yes, the sides do form a triangle. So if it does form a triangle, then what type? Acute, obtuse, or right? So this is where we now use Pythagorean theorem. So we add the shortest two sides squared together and compare that to the longest side squared. Well, 49 plus 144 is 193, and 14 squared is 196. 196 is larger, so when the c squared is bigger, that makes it an obtuse triangle. Next one. So we add the two smaller numbers. The square root of 6 is about 2.4, and the square root of 31 is about 5.6. So when we add the two smaller ones together, 5 plus the square root of 6, that gives about 7.4, which is greater than 5.6, or the square root of 31. So yes, this does make a triangle. So since it does make a triangle, what kind? So we try squaring 5 squared plus the square root of 6 squared. How does that compare to the square root of 31 squared? 5 squared is 25, square root of 6 squared is 6, and square root of 31 squared is 31. 25 plus 6 is equal to 31. So when they are equal, that means it is a right triangle. And the third one, if we add the two shorter sides together, 10 plus 14, is that greater than 26? No, it's actually 24. It is not greater than, so it does not form a triangle. Therefore, it is not acute, right, or obtuse. Next set, Pythagorean theorem. Find the missing side in the following triangles. Rather than leave your answer as a reduced radical, let's round to the nearest tenth. So the key here, as you're using a squared plus b squared equals c squared, is to make sure that your c is the hypotenuse. So in number 4, get that centered. So the two legs are the two sides that meet at the right angle. So I want to take x squared plus 4 squared, and hypotenuse is the longest side across from the right angle. So we take 5 squared. So as we solve for x, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, subtract 16 to get 9, and then the square root of 9 leaves us with x is 3, and based on the labels here of feet, 3 feet. Number 5, the two legs are 5 and 6. They meet at the right angle. 5 squared plus 6 squared needs to equal the hypotenuse x squared. 25 plus 36 is equal to 61. So we take the square root of 61 And so to the nearest tenth, go to my calculator, type in square root of 61. To the nearest tenth is 7.8. Number 6, the two legs are 5 and x. So x squared plus 5 squared needs to equal the hypotenuse 11 squared. 5 squared is 25, 11 squared is 121. Subtract 25 to get 96. And then the square root of 96 to the nearest tenth in the calculator, 9.79, so that rounds up to 9.8. This is in terms of yards. Which reminds me that I forgot to label the previous one. That was also in yards. Finding trig ratios, 8, 9, and 10. Round your answer to the nearest 10,000th. So sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. So from angle A, the opposite is 5, the hypotenuse is 13. So the ratio is 5 over 13, opposite over hypotenuse. But rounding to the nearest 10,000th, I'm going to take 5 and divide it by 13, and this is approximately 0.3846. Cosine of A, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so from angle A, adjacent is 12, 13 is the hypotenuse. 12 over 13, take the calculator, 12 divided by 13 is approximately 0.92307, so that rounds up to a 1, 9231. Tangent of A is opposite over adjacent, so opposite is 5, adjacent is 12, so it's the ratio 5 divided by 12. So to the nearest 10,000th, that goes 0.41666, so that rounds up to 4167. Now we want to use those trig ratios to find the value of x, rounding to the nearest tenth. So based on 39 degrees, x is the opposite side, 13 is the adjacent side. Opposite over adjacent is tangent. So tangent of 39 degrees is equal to opposite x over adjacent 13. Whatever number's on the bottom, we multiply that over in front of the tangent of 39, and that gets x by itself. So we type in the calculator, make sure your mode is in degrees, type in 13 tangent of 39 degrees to the nearest tenth. X is approximately 10.5. No label with the 13, so 10.5. From 69 degrees, x is the opposite side, 12 is the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse means we use sine. Sine of 69 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. Whatever number's on the bottom, multiply over to the other side. 12 sine of 69 equals x. And so we type this into the calculator. 12 sine of 69, 11.2. No label with the 12, so just 11.2. Number 13, 51 degrees, the number 12 is adjacent, and the x is the hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. Cosine of 51 degrees equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Whatever's on the bottom, multiply it over to the other side. X cosine of 51 equals 12. And then we're trying to get x by itself, so now we divide by cosine of 51. And so that leaves us with x is approximately, type in 12 divided by cosine of 51 to the nearest tenth is 19.1. No label. X is approximately 19.1. The last 3 questions on this page are using inverse trig functions. Find the value of the question mark, or you can think of that as theta. Round your answer to the nearest degree, so the nearest whole number. So based on where the question mark is, 40 is the opposite side, 48 is the adjacent side. Opposite and adjacent is tangent, so tangent of that question mark of theta is opposite over adjacent. To get the angle by itself, we have to get rid of tangent, and we do that by doing the inverse tangent to both sides, which means we take the inverse tangent of 40 over 48. So we had second tangent 40 divided by 48, and to the nearest degree, this rounds to 40 degrees. It was 39.8. Number 15, the opposite side is the 29, and 37 is the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. To get the question mark by itself, to get the angle by itself, we have to do the opposite of sine, the inverse sine of 29 divided by 37. So second sine 29 divided by 37, and to the nearest whole degree, 51.6 becomes 52 degrees. The final one. So 6 is the adjacent side, 9 is the hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse uses cosine. Cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. To get the angle by itself, we have to get rid of cosine by doing the inverse cosine of 6 over 9. So we do second cosine, 6 divided by 9. To the nearest degree, that angle is 48.1, so that's closest to 48 degrees.